Welcome to this week's episode of Sound the Alarm. I'm Laura, here with Terry as always. And this week we're joined by our very special friend, Michael Kane from Michael Kane and the Morning Afters. How are you, Mike?
Good. How are you guys?
Pretty good. You know, nice and busy as always.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're here because you actually dropped a new single just recently called Carol Kaye, which is one of 4 singles you will be releasing for your full-length album released by State Line Records.
Mm-hmm.
How's that feel, having that finally out to the masses?
It's crazy. It feels weird. We technically we started making this record maybe in 2018.
Oh.
And then we had some personnel changes. So we redid it, and probably somewhere subconsciously in me, I just felt like it just wasn't good enough and it didn't sound good enough. So we finally did it, and we finished it up in the spring, and it's slowly gonna happen. It's first single's out, and we're gonna be doing at least 2 or 3 others, I think, as a run up to the record, and then release the record. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, anytime that you put 3 years into a project to finally put it out, I can only imagine the stress you must have felt just before you went like, poof, all right, it's out, out of my hands. I can't hold on to it. Like, that must be such a real feeling.
Well, it has its pros and cons. Like, there are songs on the record that would have never been on the record if we did it in 2018, if we did it in 2019. Carol Kaye was written in the late winter of 2020.
Oh.
So if we didn't have, if we tried to record this record in 2019, the song wouldn't have existed yet. So it actually worked out for the better. Because I'm always writing, and we just keep writing and keep refining stuff. So it worked out for the better. It was just a long haul, but it was good.
Yeah. Can we talk a bit about Carol Kaye? Because the song's not necessarily about her, but I think her story, after you told me who she was, is fascinating in its own right. And the fact that you take the time to recognize someone of her talent, and it's amazing, because when I talk to folks about you, they always tell me that you are a musical encyclopedia. If you want to know something about music, you need to talk to Michael Kane, because he will tell you everything that you need to know.
Well, that's flattering. But also too, like, I think it's just my age, because back when I was a kid, like, we would just collect and buy magazines, and we'd read them cover to cover, and we'd read every music. When I say we, maybe I'm just thinking of me, but every musician, biography, and we just keep. Now it's just a click of a button. You can have all the information you want. So back then, I just wanted to learn as much as I could, and I've always been fascinated by this group, the Wrecking Crew, who was sort of a group of musicians, and it wasn't just like 4 or 5 musicians. It was like a dozen musicians that were around primarily from the 50s to the 70s, and they played on everything. I mean, they played on Sinatra records, they played on Pet Sounds, they played on, everything, like the bass line in These Boots Are Made for Walking by Nancy Sinatra. That's Carol Kaye. Like, it's unbelievable how, like, and I'm only going to use like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as like a weird thing. It's weird how, like, people get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for how many records they've sold. Meanwhile, there's these people that have played on like hundreds of #1 hits and aren't even known. It's bizarre. So she's mentioned in the song and in the song title, but the song's not necessarily a historical, thing on her, but yeah.
Yeah, you put the line, everybody wants to play like Carol Kaye. And if you don't know Carol Kaye, you need to go look. Like, she played Beach Boys, commercials, any TV shows that you may have heard, especially like our age, because I'm not too far from you, Michael, we grew up listening to Carol Kaye, never heard a thing or knew who she was. Like, just the amount of stuff that this lady's put out is, the whole Wrecking Crew, really. It's astounding. Like, it's such a huge number, and we have no idea. And I think, taking the time to just kind of recognize that, even if it's just subtly, is awesome. Like, you still find a way to honor the greats. Now, your style for this album, or I guess I want to say the single, it's got a very 70s feel. It sounds very much like something I would have heard on the radio growing up. My parents, we only had the one radio station in town. Between the English and the French music, a lot of Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty, that 70s, 80s rock. And that your style really is reflective of that.
Well, I think it's important too to remember where you come from, and like as a songwriter, anyways, like you're constantly like just analyzing people's songs, and I've done it my whole life. Going like, oh well, Tom Petty finishes a line like this, and the way he would finish it, he goes down, and Bruce Springsteen might go up, and it's like there's a bunch of little things that like listening to music for 40 years. Can really widen your taste when you start a band, and you're like, all right, well, I like punk rock, and I like, folk music, and I like the Beatles, and I like Bob Dylan, and so it's good to be able to take from little pools instead of just the punk rock or just the whatever you're into. It's good to be able to borrow from people like that.
Yeah, if you look at punk in general, just historically, it was taken from rock songs and just sped up and made dirtier, and it kind of evolved from that. Hardcore was almost the exact same thing. It was a style that was what seemed brash at the time is now considered, especially if you're looking at 80s hardcore, it wasn't that crazy to our time now. Like now it just seems, oh, well, this is hardcore. Like I hear Descendants is always a band that comes to my mind. You have two camps on this. One that says Descendants is not hardcore and they were actually pop punk. And then you have my camp who says they kind of pioneered it. And, they kind of, we don't get along. We don't agree. There's no middle ground. But like if I look at Milo Goes to College, it's an album to me that's very harsh. It's got a lot of stuff that you would never imagine talking about, back in the 80s, especially. Like they talked about mental health. They talked about the LGBTQ community. They talked about, just angst and anxiety, suicide and depression, like just all those things. Those themes were definitely not found. But yeah, you have taken a theme and a style that was very common, but you've kind of put your spin on that. And I think it's brilliant. I think really what you did with it was great.
Thanks. True. Also, too, for me, the number one thing that is different, not to like be like I'm old and things are different now. It's the radio. There's no radio anymore. So I have like a bad habit where like if Hard Times ever writes an article about me, it'll be like Michael Kane writes another song with the word radio in it. Like, because it's just like, it's so nostalgia. Like when I was a kid, you could put on the radio and you could hear, the Beatles, and then you could hear Led Zeppelin, and then maybe you hear Sinatra or like some big band, like swing stuff. And it was very like the local stations got a little weird, especially late at night. And it wasn't so programmed, and it was really cool. And you learned a lot about new bands you didn't know. I guess it's like the new Spotify release radar that's on where if you like this, you'd love this. It doesn't always work out that way, but the radio is the thing that's missing, and I don't think it'll ever come back. But
yeah, unfortunately, we see it with a lot of mediums. Television's taking a hit, especially with cable. Antennas anywhere these days, and that was, remember the good old days of having to try to tune in and literally having to, one bad storm and having to move everything and like.
Oh yeah, yep.
the technology is just completely different. And I guess the big question is, and unfortunately it hasn't worked for television, but even for radio, is how do you adjust? They came out with Sirius, which is a good way, and maybe Spotify, if you consider that to be a form of radio. But yeah, it's not like how we used to listen to the radio, because back in the day, I remember I would take my tape, wait for my favorite song to go on the radio, and the second I heard like a little inkling was like smash that record button. And I'm sure you grew up the same way.
Oh yeah.
And then you played that tape to death, you know, till it got stuck and the tape machine ate it, and some smoke eventually came if you couldn't work the pencil anymore. It was just like,
yeah, we did all that. We would record songs off the radio. We would I would record MTV on my VCR and just let that run. I'd record all the behind the musics when that was still a thing. Yeah, and then just watch them all. But now we have YouTube, and I can go on just spirals on YouTube for hours.
You almost hurt yourself.
Yeah, sometimes really weird shit, and sometimes, you know, a cool concert, you know.
Yeah, I guess the cool thing about the internet is that you find music that you normally probably would never have found before. And, you know, I kind of want to say that you cater to, you know, that punk, but also the rock. But you're trying to get to that era and trying to appeal to all the masses. Like, because your music does, it really does. I played your song to my dad, and he wanted to know when your album was coming out. So
there you go. Cool.
You know, like, it spoke to him too, because he to him it was familiar. And now you do something interesting. The way you talk isn't necessarily the way you sing. Something that Bruce Springsteen and Tom Petty, and that they all had, like, I don't want to say clean voices, but I kind of want to say that yours is not like that. It's a little bit more, I want to say seasoned, if that's the right way of saying it. You know, you're not, I always thought that you talked the way you it's not, but I think that brings such a neat element. It kind of, and that's kind of the element that's letting you cross over both, is really the vocals to this.
Yeah, I mean, ideally it's to, you want as many people to like your band as possible, and it would be cool to be able to appeal to older people and younger people and people that like all different kinds of music. And, you know, in 2021, I don't know how easy that is. I guess we'll find out, but yeah, it's just a matter of, I mean, as far as my voice goes, it's like a blown out speaker. It's like, if I sing soft, thank you. If I sing soft, there's barely any distortion on it, maybe a little bit. But then once I turn up the volume on it, it just gets like all crackly. But I can sing in key, so I guess that's like half the battle. Like, you know.
Well, I think that's very, like, common with Oi bands. You know, Oi has that style too, where just anyone who can sing in key doesn't necessarily mean that they're like a clear voice. There's distortion in it. I don't know if distortion's the right word, but it's very common. And I think that's why it's appealing, because it's not something that you normally do listen to. It's not something that's normally, if you're looking for a blank vocal, you're not going to get that through you. It's just not going to happen. You have really your own type of voice, but it's beautiful in its own way.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Now, how does the band feel about everything going on? Because you're not by yourself. You have several people.
I do. I have my band, which I'm very grateful to have. Everybody in it is awesome, and we all get along very well, and we all work together very well. But for better or worse, I'm also a control freak to the nth degree. Whereas I'm up for opinions, but a lot of times I'm just like, I just gotta do this myself. Hence the cassette tapes that we put out for Carol Kaye. So you would think that you buy the cassette tapes from this Canadian company and they send you the tapes. You can get anywhere from a minute aside to 90 minutes aside or 45 minutes aside or whatever it is. So I get 3 minutes aside. Both songs are going to fit. And I'm like, well, shit, I need a cover. So like I ordered from Etsy, I ordered the little brown cardboard things that the tapes slide into. And I'm like, well, I can't just fucking write on this thing. It'll look like a fucking 3-year-old did it. So then I bought a fucking vinyl cutter, a big fucking vinyl cutter machine so I can cut out the letters to stick on the tape on both sides, which is fucking time consuming as shit. Then I ordered stickers to put on the front of the covers. Now it's like this full-on art project, all because I couldn't send a file to somebody to be like, can you make these up? So it's a problem. And I think my band sees that, and they sort of just like back away when I get in a tear about creating something, and they're just like, whenever you want us to play, we'll play. And, and that's it. So
now let's talk about the singles, because you got the one side is Carol Kaye, but the other song is a unreleased track that you guys did actually record with the album, called Father /
Yeah. So we've been playing that song since we were a band. We played it at our first show. We probably recorded it time after time after time, and it never sounded right. And we recorded it for this record, and it did sound good. But we decided to go with another song that's on the record where they were both kind of the same tempo, and it was sort of like a pick one or the other type of thing. So that one got left off, and I thought it would be fun to put it on the B side of the single, we call it, but B side of the cassette, and not put it anywhere digital. Like not put it on Bandcamp, not put it on Spotify, just have Carol Kaye up. And if you want to hear this one song, buy the tape for anybody that even fucking has a tape player. I think I might try to figure out a way to put a download code with it, but again, I'm in way over my head. I'm in way over my head.
But it's still cool and that's the one thing I've noticed, because we've known each other for a few months now. We've corresponded, we've spoken. You actually sent me handwritten notes of 2 of your songs, and I thought that was probably, I'm not gonna lie, I do get some merch. People do send me presents. I don't know, but thank you. But I thought yours was the most thoughtful one, to take the time to actually sit there and handwrite something and say, hey Terry, thanks for what you're doing, here's a copy of my song in your own writing. Who does that? Like, that's just so thoughtful. It's next level. It's the thing that, like, when I received it, went, oh damn, who this guy? Like,
so yeah, somebody that has a lot of time on their hands. But also, when we put our 7-inch out, when Mark put our 7-inch out in 2017, I think, maybe 17, called Laughing at the Shape of Men, he printed 500 of those, I think. And I told him I wanted to give him an index card to put inside every one of them. A handwritten index card. I'm like, all I gotta do is handwrite 500 cards. It's not a big deal. It'll just take me like a week. So I did. I wrote a stack of cards, and I don't know if I did it just for 300 or 200, but if you have the record, and you bought it from Mark, you probably have an index card with a written note. But I think, like, I want to look. Yeah, I wonder if you have it, because you got yours from Mark, right?
I did.
You should look, because if it doesn't, I'm going to look like a total fucking asshole right now.
There's only 300.
Do we do this right now?
Bound to have.
But if you got it from Mark, there should be a thing in it. But I don't know. Now I'm like, maybe there's not. But I did write a shit ton of those things out. Now I'm really
I'm
curious.
very unlucky though, so I probably didn't get one. But
I mean,
still,
I mean, he may have sold all the ones that had him in there. Maybe.
Okay,
I don't know.
so here it is.
All right.
Oh, the moment of truth. Oh gosh. Michael's like, fuck.
Yep.
I did not get one.
All right, I'll send you one you can put in it.
Oh my god, no, it's okay, because I also have a handwritten copy of Carol Kaye.
All
And
right,
I
cool.
thought that was really sweet. I was going to say that too, but I don't want to interrupt. Well, I opened mine too, and I immediately put it in a frame and put it in my bedroom because I was like, this is really, really cool. I was like, it has my name on it. I was like, it was just something really personal. It just, I think it, like Terry said, it was just a nice, it wasn't your average t-shirt or your pin. Not that we don't appreciate those things, because we absolutely do, and it's so not necessary. But when stuff like that comes in, it's just like, wow, thank you. You know, that little extra touch means a lot.
Yeah, well, I think that's, I mean, not to get too much into like, and it's not a marketing thing. It's just I genuinely feel like appreciative when anybody gives a shit. Like, I do. Like, you know, and I don't know. I just like, I'm a collector of stuff. Like, I collect vinyl and I collect cassette tapes and I collect autographs and I collect lyrics and I collect all that shit. So me being a nerd about all that stuff, I'm like, maybe these people will think this is cool. Maybe they'll think it's fucking dumb. But
no, I thought it was pretty rad.
There you go. So like, it's not me trying to like win over people. It's more of like, I really am like, how, you know, I'm like talking to Mark, how can you sell a record without me actually personally thanking the person who bought it? Like, I feel like that's not right. I should be thanking these people. Like, like, give me a list of everybody that bought our record and I'll send them an email. Like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like, you know, I don't know. That's just personally how I feel. I'm just grateful that people kind of like it or like give a shit. So like, you know, what's a note saying like, hey, thanks for being a part of this.
We're the same way when we don't have merch out at the moment. We're working on a bunch of new stuff for Riot Squad and camp. But when we were doing a couple runs of merch before, every order that went out, I hand packed. I put a handwritten index card note in each order, and sometimes it was quick and it took me a few minutes, and other times we had stacks of orders and I'm spending all the time. But you know what? Like, I feel like you said, I want to thank everybody, because any person that's going to go to our website and take the time to look at our stuff and to purchase something that we made for them, that's so humbling. And the least that we can do is personally say thank you, you know? So I think it's really great to know that there's other people out there that do those little tiny things too. It means a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, yeah, I think it makes a difference. And it's just a matter of community and trying to like, you know, I don't know. I told my band when we first started the band, I go, it's not that hard being in a band. I'm like, just don't be a fucking dickhead. I'm like, if that can be your motto, like if that can just be like, maybe your songs aren't great, maybe a lot of people don't go to your shows, but just don't be a dick. Like, if you can just not be a dick, like, I think that's like half the battle. It really is. Because there's so many sweet people out there, and there are also so many fucking just assholes out there. So just, yeah. No.
Yes. Now you're from the Boston area.
Yeah.
Yes. So you kind of grew up in a very interesting time during that. We spoke to Mark about this a bit. We only touched it, but you could go to a show and it was just different styles everywhere you went. You wanted a little bit hardcore, you go here. If you want a little bit of oi, you go here. If you want, you know, anything, you were able to find it. And, you know, it was a complete grab bag. So can you kind of elaborate as to what was going on during that time? Because I'm sure it has a big influence as to how you're playing now, because you do pick up a little bit of styles throughout your music.
Yeah. Growing up, I used to go to shows a lot in Providence as well as Boston, but Providence was a little closer and it was very accessible. Smaller city, easy to park, easy to go to shows. So we'd go to shows in Providence at like Club Babyhead was a place, and we would go see I mean, I saw Green Day at Club Babyhead, and the place holds like, I don't know, 150 people, or it did 100 people. And this was like right, I don't know, I probably have my dates wrong. It'd probably be something worth Googling, but it was right when Dookie was coming out, or right before it came out. And seeing them was nuts, but it was also seeing the Ramones a bunch of times, because if you lived in the United States and you were going to shows in the late 80s, early 90s, you had no reason why you haven't seen the Ramones, because they would play like, you know, they were wondering why they never played big places in the US, because they didn't. Like when they went over to like South America, they'd play stadiums, but when they came here, they'd play clubs, because they play like Portland, Maine. They play Burlington, Vermont. They'd come down and they played Boston. They'd play Worcester. They'd play Providence. They'd play 3 shows in Connecticut. Like, I mean, they didn't travel far in between shows. They played so much. So I probably saw them about 8 times, 10 times. But yeah, it was just, the 90s were so weird, especially because, you know, it kind of kicked off with Nirvana and grunge a little bit, and then Green Day, and then Boston exploded in the mid to late 90s. And I was at a bunch of those shows, and I didn't have a band. And looking back on it, I'm like, if I just started then, I probably would have gotten somewhere. But it was very strange, because we used to go to shows. I'm about 15 minutes out of Worcester, the city of Worcester, and that's considered our home base. And that's where we went to shows mainly. And the scene was so huge that you would get these big bands coming to Worcester playing like a small, all ages, no alcohol club. That's how big it was. Like you'd get like an Epitaph band on a Tuesday night playing Worcester and packing it and selling it out. And I don't know if that's how it was throughout the country, or if we were just super lucky with how things were. I don't know. I mean, I think there was obviously a boom. There was clearly a boom anyways, that time.
You know, I think a big reason for that, it's that Live Nation, you know, piece. When they kind of took everything, those shows exploded in size, but it just wasn't those personal shows anymore. Like they all kind of just became festivals and stuff like that. If you wanted to be jam-packed, you know, like Punk Rock Bowling is an example. Riot Fest is another one. You know, we're essentially with camp trying to bring that smaller scale, much smaller scale. We're no Riot Fest. But, you know, like, I think, I don't know when the time came where we forgot about our basement shows and our club shows and just wanted to hit the big arenas. And I think in a way that kind of, I don't want to say killed the scene, but it made it harder for people like me to get to shows. It was always hard for me to get to shows because I'm from but you know, as many.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like the scene goes, and whether it be downfalls or whatnot, I mean, not to throw stones, but the downfall is a Warped Tour. That's the downfall. And granted, I would go in 98, 99 and see a lot of my favorite bands. But as a musician in his early 40s who plays small clubs, it's like, all right, let's say, I mean, I know Warped Tour is over now, so it's irrelevant. But even up to a couple years ago when they were going strong, let's say Warped Tour has 10 really big bands, 10 mid-level bands, and 10 bands that are just happy to be on it, happy to be playing. Now, those are 30 bands that could be separately going to many, many, many cities and allowing smaller bands to open for them, allowing, you know, people to work. But instead, they're all on this one big tour going city to city. They're not hitting the small clubs because bands are just going, oh, we're coming through on Warped Tour. We'll come by. So the growth got stunted right when that happened, because all those bands were just coming around in such a huge setting and all at once that it didn't do anything for the smaller bands. Like there was no, you know what I mean? There was no big bands to open for because they were just all on that big fucking tour. I'm sure I'm not the first person to say that, but
no, it's interesting because in a way it's prices, right? We all have to look at this as what it is, and it's, money drives, it costs money to drive to places now more so than it ever did. It costs money to, lodging, food, all stuff. Like, I can see why that happened, because people just wanted more money off of everybody and everything, that it kind of just, in a way, forced people to just be like, all right, let's just pool our resources together and see how much we can get, just because it just became so expensive. If anything, with COVID, I kind of hope to see a resurgence of those small venue shows and seeing, those basement shows come back, because in a way we're kind of going to be forced to.
And I think it will happen, especially once the weather breaks a little bit. We were starting to see, like, in the fall, people were getting creative and doing shows out on their patios and, like, renting out, like, town parks and things like that to socially distance, but still be able to have music and stuff. So it's just like, let's maybe pump the brakes and take it back to those DIY roots and figure out, like, okay, we just want to play music and to be there with each other. We don't need 20,000 people around at a time. So it was nice for me to see that, like in end of August and September and October and stuff like that, bands popping up and doing these little fun things outdoors that were safe and stuff like that. And even with the live streams, trying to find ways around it and still be able to, like, connect with your fans in the community and stuff like that. I think we are going to see a resurgence once a lot of us are able to get vaccinated and, we are on the downslope of this, hopefully. I think, fingers crossed, I think we will see a lot of that. And, another thing too, is you've got venues closing down literally left and right. There's nowhere for people to play. So that's literally forcing you into a basement. It's forcing you into those VFWs and things like that, which is honestly, in my opinion, a really great thing.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully that will, that's how it'll start to rebuild with things like that. And hopefully there are still clubs to play when playing happens again, because so many have closed. So hopefully they can figure that out. I mean, it's just weird times now anyways. Like,
now you guys are doing this during this weird time. It's you still are putting stuff out for us. Maybe it's also a bit for you too, but I'm the one who's receiving the gift here, so I'm going to say it's for me. me. Still have 3 other singles that are coming out. Your full length's going to happen in fall, with a potential of that you may or may not tour. How is that scary? Like, it must be scary. I'd be fucking scary.
I mean, there's just so much unknown now. Like, for like a small band like us, right, we need to be a little more particular about the moves we make. I mean, I'm sure every band does, even up to the bigger bands. But for us, it's like, it doesn't make sense for us to put a record we've worked so hard on and to put it out and not be able to tour or play shows on it. It's just, and there's bands that have put records out this year, and some of them have been awesome. And it's not a knock against bands that are doing that, but just for us, we'd rather just kind of wait a little bit, and, and who knows, maybe it comes out at the end of the summer because we feel like we can do that. But we want to play shows to support it. And I think that's the important thing. And we want to do it when it's safe, and we don't want to do it before that. So, we constantly write and record stuff. We have another sort of sneak EP that's coming out this year with a friend's band. We're just going to put that out one day. You'll just see it and it'll be there. But it's just that you just got to keep the brain moving, and you got to keep the writing process moving and the whole thing moving, even if the world is totally, totally fucked. Yeah.
Well, I am very excited to hear this EP. I didn't have the privilege of listening to this, so I'm very, very excited.
Yep. Nobody has.
This has been like quite, you have this on lockdown pretty hard, because I know well, everything you guys are doing is really on lockdown. Is that kind of like a design between you and the management, or is that kind of just by what you're deciding, or just?
I'm terrible at all of that. I will tell you right now that there's a good chance that if anybody watching this is like, can I hear a song from your record, and sends me an email, I'd probably send them a link. And that's terrible. I shouldn't be doing that. I should like have a plan.
He's not wrong.
I should like have a plan. I should have a plan. I should stick with it. I'm a professional. I should do it right. It's, you got to have a plan in place. As much as you want people to hear the songs, you know, you can't have it be counterintuitive to the label when it comes out. You can't be like, well, everybody already has the songs, they're not going to buy it. Like, you know, they're the ones also putting their time and effort and money into it. So you gotta keep things, keep things tight. Yeah.
So how many songs is your album?
The album's 12 songs. It's 11 originals and a cover. We did a cover of Sam Cooke's Bring It On Home, that we started playing live right around the time we got Joe on keyboards, because like he's a game changer, just through and through. Like he changed how we do everything in the band, adding keys. And it was something I wanted from the very beginning. We just didn't find the right person. So like I can tell Joe, like, I want to do a Frank Sinatra song, and he'll be like, all right, I'll learn it. Let's do this. Like his musical knowledge is so vast and his playing is so great that to do that Sam Cooke song was like perfect for him. And the studio we recorded at Wachusett Recording in Princeton, Mass. They have this old upright piano, and it's just like slightly out of tune, So it sounds so cool on the record because it sounds very like honky tonk piano, like, and it came out really good, and we did it live. So when people do hear our version of Bring It On Home, that's all live in the studio.
Yeah.
Other than vocals, I did it after, but all the music is just live on the spot. And I thought it came out perfect. I was actually kind of shocked that it came out the way it did. But yeah, 12 songs, couple slow songs, one acoustic song. I think it's important to do that. Even on our 7-inch, we had an acoustic song. So it was one acoustic song. And then just the rest, just straight kind of rock and roll. And hopefully it's catchy enough and people like it. And yeah.
Well, Michael, unfortunately our time has run, but thank you so much for sharing some time with us and kind of talking to us about your album. I'm
absolutely
really excited to hear. I know I still have to wait a few months for it, but that's okay. I'll be patient. But,
yeah. No, thanks to both of you for having me. And yeah, hopefully you'll be hearing a lot more. I mean, you have to. I'm not keeping this shit any longer. It's all coming out this year. You're gonna get it all.
So your album will be found on State Line Records?
Yes, it'll be at getpunk.com. It'll be on State Line Records website. If you guys aren't familiar, just go there now anyways and just buy a bunch of shit. I think our 7-inch is probably on sale. If you don't have that yet, maybe you'll get an index card in it. Maybe you won't. And then we also have our Bandcamp where I find stuff in my basement that we have one shirt of this design left, and I'll put it on the Bandcamp. Things like that. Or I'll get little merch ideas, like little keychains and things, and I'm like, all right, we're going to order these, and I'll put them up, and 2 people will buy them, and I'll be like, they get it. Now,
you also have your singles on there for $25, I believe. Singles,
$25. I wish.
Sorry, I'm like, I don't know what. I didn't check.
Maybe that's $25 in Canadian, but they'll be $6 or so.
Oh, well, that's not $25 in Canadian either.
No, it's not.
So the singles have 2 songs. One is Carol Kaye. The other side's Father and Son. Father and Son is not released digitally.
Nowhere, baby.
So that's really cool. You don't hear that ever.
Nope.
And if you need to look at those keychains, I got one. It is the coolest thing. It looks just like a hotel room key.
Oh, I love it. It's the coolest thing ever.
Yes.
I love fun merch like that. You know, things that you don't find all the time.
There you go. Yep.
And I put my keys right on it. I use it every day.
Yes.
They're my mailbox keys, so I bring them with me when I go do mailbox stuff. And the girls love it because they know it's the big one, right? So when I go send them on their mailbox run, they're like, the big key? I'm like, yes, the big key. And they're like, but yes, Michael, again, thank you so much for coming on. I'm very excited. We don't know the title just yet because that's not being released to us. Michael.
It's not being released to me either. I'm going back and forth between a couple. It'll have one eventually.
And when it does, we will announce it here for you guys. Make sure you check out Michael's stuff, Michael Kane and the Morning Afters. Michael, again, thank you so much. And who do we have next week?
Next week, we have Susie Moon coming on. Yeah, we're going to talk about all her new stuff, her solo project. She's going to be joining us at Camp Pennsylvania 2021. So we'll have some more information on that. So we'll see you guys later. Thank you.